Welcome to this explainer. We're actually going to completely skip the usual agenda today because the reality of occupational noise hazards is just, well, it demands our absolute immediate attention right now. We are looking at a profound, fundamental shift in exactly how we understand, protect, and very soon, medically restore human hearing. So let's dive right in.
Look at the sheer scale of this exposure, 22 million. According to the CDC and NIOSH, 22 million workers in the United States are exposed to hazardous occupational noise every single year. Whether they're out on a factory floor, working a bustling tarmac, or operating heavy machinery, that is 22 million individuals facing a 100% preventable risk to their biological health. That's a massive number. And that massive number brings us to a really tough but absolutely necessary question for every safety manager watching this explainer. Is your hearing conservation program actually working? Or, let's be honest, are you just checking OSHA compliance boxes? Because as we're going to see today, passing a standard annual hearing test doesn't necessarily mean a worker's auditory system is truly protected. To understand why that is, we need to look at part 1, the visible baseline and how we track threshold shifts. The absolutely crucial point here is understanding exactly where noise damage hits first. It's the 3 to 6 kilohertz danger zone. And this isn't just some arbitrary range, it's literally acoustic physics. The human ear canal acts kind of like a resonator, and it naturally amplifies sounds at around 3,000 hertz by an extra 10 to 15 decibels. That means the super fragile hair cells on the basilar membrane inside the cochlea are taking a massive compounded beating in this specific high-frequency range. And this happens way before a worker ever even notices they're losing the ability to hear everyday speech. So this noise damage basically accumulates in two ways. You've got temporary threshold shifts, or TTS, and permanent threshold shifts, PTS. Now, TTS is really just metabolic fatigue. The ear's hair cells are exhausted, right? But they actually can recover if they're given 12 to 24 hours of quiet. That is exactly why OSHA requires that 14-hour quiet period before taking a baseline audiogram. But if a worker is subjected to repeated TTS events, like shift after shift without adequate protection or adequate recovery time, that fatigue eventually converts into PTS. And that means irreversible cellular death. But what if I told you that permanent shift is actually only the tip of the iceberg? Welcome to part 2, the hidden threat. Lying just beneath the surface of traditional hearing loss is something called cochlear synaptopathy. Now, think of this as the immediate and irreversible severing of your auditory cables, these super delicate ribbon synapses that physically connect the inner hair cells to the auditory nerve fibers. And what's absolutely staggering about this is that even moderate noise exposure can destroy these neural connections completely, all while leaving the sensory hair cells themselves totally structurally intact. And this exact biological disconnect leads to literally the most common, frustrating complaint clinicians hear from patients. I can hear, but I can't understand. Because the hair cells are intact, their absolute volume perception is perfectly fine. But because those high-threshold nerve fibers are lost, the precise temporal coding that your brain requires to decode speech in, say, a noisy restaurant or a loud factory floor, that ability is completely shattered. Which brings us to a massive, frankly terrifying blind spot in occupational safety. Let's call it the audiogram illusion. Because standard pure-tone audiograms only test for absolute volume thresholds in a completely quiet room, which mainly relies on outer hair cell function, they completely miss the synaptic damage. In fact, epidemiological surveys show that 12 to 15% of people with completely normal pure-tone audiograms actually have this hidden hearing loss. It's kind of a dark irony, really. Millions of workers might be passing their annual safety tests with flying colors, all while quietly suffering from this devastating neural epidemic. So how in the world do we fix a problem that we can't even easily see? That's part 3, closing the gap, where we completely rethink hearing protection. For any safety manager, the answer always has to start with the hierarchy of controls. Counterintuitively, personal protective equipment like earplugs, that's actually your last line of defense. The absolute best strategy is to buy quiet, literally eliminating the noise hazard right at the source through engineering by purchasing quieter machinery. Now, if that fails, we move to administrative controls. This means increasing the physical distance between the worker and the noise, or maybe rotating their shifts. Only when those options just aren't feasible do we finally rely on hearing protection devices. But if we're going to rely on those devices, we absolutely must upgrade our safety standards. Look, OSHA's 90 decibel permissible limit, that is really just a regulatory compromise. NIOSH's 85 decibel recommended limit with a 3 decibel exchange rate is the true biological safety standard here. Furthermore, we have got to stop blindly trusting those noise reduction ratings printed on the side of earplug boxes, because they so often vastly overstate the real-world protection you're getting. We need to implement individual REAT-based personal fit testing to guarantee each worker is actually getting the attenuation they need. And clinically, we need to start integrating speech and noise tests like Quicksin to catch that hidden neural damage early on. Okay, now we are going to pivot from passive prevention to part 4, the regenerative frontier. This is the future of auditory medicine.
For literally over a century, auditory medicine has been almost entirely passive. We use earplugs to block the noise out, or we use hearing aids to just amplify it. But April 23, 2026 marks a historic, undeniable paradigm shift with the FDA approval of Odarmeni. With this, we are officially moving away from just passive compensation and entering the era of active biological restoration and regeneration of the inner ear.
And the current therapeutic pipeline right now is incredibly dense. Like we mentioned, Odarmeni uses targeted gene therapy to deliver a fully functional OTOF gene directly to inner hair cells. And again, that's already FDA approved as of April 2026. We also have SBI 1055, also known as Epsilon, sitting in phase 3 trials. That's a small molecule catalyst designed specifically to fight neuroinflammation in Meniere's disease. But, it hasn't all been smooth sailing either. Take a look at FX322 down at the bottom there, which actually had to be recently discontinued. Honestly, though, the failure of FX322 provides us with such a crucial lesson, and it brilliantly ties together everything we've been talking about today. See, FX322 successfully stimulated progenitor cells to regenerate hair cells in early trials. Awesome, right? But the phase 2b study failed to actually improve speech perception. Why? Because regenerating a sensory hair cell in total isolation is totally useless if that brand new cell cannot establish functional synaptic connections with the auditory nerve. It goes right back to that hidden cochlear synaptopathy. A true cure absolutely must fix both the visible hair cells and those hidden neural synapses.
We are standing on the precipice of a totally new era. The days of just handing out cheap foam earplugs and running basic pure-tone audiograms, those days are coming to an end. We now fully understand the profound, hidden neural damage that's caused by occupational noise, and medical science is rapidly developing the genetic and pharmacological tools to actively repair it. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. As medicine finally makes the leap from passive protection to active biological restoration, is your hearing conservation program actually ready for the future?